So welcome back to Threshold Revisited, where we look at a very similar session, or the same session as I did last time for Threshold on the bike, but comparing it to the Diretto and the Kicker, and also how I might compare it to Mathieu van der Poel on his most recent Strade Bianche win. So last time it was a case of looking at whether or not I could claim to have a 400 watt threshold, and no, basically. And since then I've done a few other threshold sessions in order to compare and see whereabouts I'm at. And no, I'm not at 400 watts, it's a bit below that. But this time round it was 460 watts for the 40 seconds on and 20 seconds at 230 watts. So 10 times through, 4 by 10 minutes, and with 2 minutes in between. It's hot, legs hurt, it's tough. Okay, here we go. Last round. Starting to cool a little bit now. Flipping hot. That was tough. Okay, I'm not always this lame. Who doesn't look at their data straight after their ride or run or whatever session? So how does my session compare to Mathieu van der Poel? He's just won Strade Bianche, and if I look at his last, I think it was 39 minutes on the bike, he's got a Strava segment up, it's been publicised. He averaged 382 watt for 39 minutes 20 seconds. If we look at my session, I averaged 400 watts for 40 minutes worth of work with 2 minutes rest in between those. So I think it came out 380 watts as well. So for the equivalent amount of time, I was able to hold the same power-ish, here or thereabouts. However, you can't neglect the amount of kilojoules worth of work, or the amount of work that he's done prior to being able to deliver that last hour of work or the last 40 minutes of work. And not only that, his ability to spike well above that threshold for the massive attacks that he's put in. It's a completely different sort of ability, far beyond what I can comprehend. So threshold is so important. You've got to have that stable threshold ability, but also the ability to go well above for these little attacks and spikes. When it comes to triathlon, maybe not so much, because you have those little spikes every now and again if you're doing dead turns and in and out of corners and things like that in draft legal racing. If you're training for Ironman or 70.3, there's less of that, so threshold and tempo work might be a little bit more important. I think something for you guys to take away from the session and that kind of session is that you have to have it prescribed correctly. Make sure that that top end is within the bracket of where you want to be working, and it depends on your athlete profile. So I've got quite a big VO2, I'm able to go to that top end and then come back down and recover. Whereas someone who hasn't got that VO2 might not be able to go that high, might not be able to separate those two wattages quite as much. This kind of fartlek threshold session is great for simulating that sort of through and off type of work that you get within draft legal racing. All types of threshold training is great, and don't get me wrong, if it's pure threshold or fartlek training or any of the above, it's all going to improve your ability to either ride a bike, run or swim. Don't get me wrong, this session hurt. Whilst I get satisfaction out of doing it, the next day my legs don't want to turn on the run, the swim's a little bit sluggish, and yeah, I did my first rep in the pool and I was like, ugh. Take that into consideration when you're going into the next day. It does take it out of you. Trusting the process, trusting your program is set up correctly, having that belief that you are improving, you're able to get through that next session, and that your journey's just keeping on going and keeping on progressing. It's satisfying to be able to see that the progression is carrying on every time. Thanks for tuning in and watching me babble about threshold and my experience on the bike and suffering a little bit. But if you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. It helps me out, helps the channel out, helps us out as entire, and hopefully we can bring you a little bit more value in the future.